And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at a game that I've been excited about for quite some time, and originally discovered when I was traveling over in England and had a chance to play it at the London On Board Game Club, and that game is Lancaster, which is by Queen Games, plays pretty quickly, and it's a fun little game about moving knights around. You're going to build up your family of knights or your group of knights, use them to influence noblemen to fight in combats and to work in your own castle in order to earn victory points. So real quick, why don't we take a look at this Queen Games title. We'll see how the game plays and what comes inside of the box, and then when we're done, we'll come back here and I'll give you my final opinions of it. So here you can see Lancaster all set up for a 3-player game. Now this is a big board, there's a lot of stuff, so it may be a little bit hard to see, but I'm just going to give you a general rundown of how the game plays. In this game, you are trying to score victory points by using your knights in order to influence different areas, influence the nobles in the country, or the noblemen in the country. You're trying to send your knights into conflicts, and you're going to have your knights working in your own little castle. Each player will start the game with a level 1 and a level 2 knight. They look like this. They say level 1 and level 2, and they're also different thicknesses. And then they have the option to get more level 1, 2, 3, and 4 knights throughout the game, and the power of your knights is important for placing them on the board and winning various different things. In addition, you're going to start the game with a castle board. You can see one here, but I'm going to show you a different one. This is the purple player's castle board, and on that board you'll see spaces for nobles as you acquire them. You'll see how many votes you're going to get for having your noblemen. You'll see places for extensions to your castle, and every player will start with one of these. That's going to give them some general bonuses and resources throughout the game, or general abilities that they can use. And you'll see a layout of how the game turns take and where you can place your knights and your voting cubes. This is just generally a player's board. In addition, they're going to have a shield to cover up some of their stuff. You'll see it looks like this, and behind it I've got my money, I've got my squires, and I have some knights. I also have the knights for the other players hidden right now so that I can keep them out of view for you guys. Now that we know what each player has, why don't we go ahead and talk about how the game is going to work. Essentially, the game is broken down into phases, and the first phase of each round is placing knights out onto the board. Now, there are 3 different places you can place knights. As I said, you can place them out in the country, you can place them in a conflict, or you can place them on your own castle in order to take an action. If you're placing out into the country, you're essentially placing onto one nobleman's castle. And when you place out here, each of these has a minimum value that you have to place. So for example, this one right here requires that you place at least 1 value of knight. Same for this one. This one requires 2, 4, 3, and you see that there's a variation on this board. When you place your knights, you must place a minimum of that amount in strength. So for example, this level 2 knight cannot be placed here on York, but he could be placed over here on Suffolk. In addition, when you place these out here, you may put squires with them in order to increase your power. So, I could not put this guy out here, and I can't even put him out there with a squire to make his power 3, but I could put a level 2 knight on a level 2 area and increase his power to 3 with a squire. This makes it harder for other players to play over you. But if on a future turn, let's say for example blue had a level 3 or a level 4 knight, they could come out here and kick me off like this. I would get my knight back and I would lose my squire. So that's how placement's going to work in general. You're going to have to place, and if you want to kick somebody else out, you must place a total higher value than what the previous person has placed, including their squires. When you're placing out on these, you're trying to get some type of reward. You'll see that each of these buildings has an associated noble. They're all right here in different colors, and there are several different nobles, A through H or I, and you're trying to collect all of them. The more you collect, the more points you'll get at the end of the game. When you go here, and once we resolve them, whoever has the highest has the choice of either taking the noble from that area or taking the bonus associated with the area here. So some of these will be additional extensions to your castle, which will give you more benefits at the end of the round. Some of these will be upgrading your levels of knights, or some of them will be getting new knights and some voting cubes. Others will be upgrading your knights and getting some voting cubes, or some, later in the game, will be straight victory points. So there's all types of different rewards you can get, and you get to choose one or the other. However, if you resolve the area, you have the highest one, and you pay 3 money, you can take both benefits, getting both the noblemen to give you points at the end of the game, and the reward on the castle, giving you resources to use throughout. When you place a knight on your castle board, you're going to be trying to take an action. Basically, one of the actions that's printed right onto the board, and you'll see that they are many and varied. This one allows you to pay 3 of your squires in order to get a new level 1 knight, or this one here will allow you to pay, or to put a knight there and get 2 gold, or a gold and a squire, or 2 squires, or 2 voting cubes, or pay 2 squires and level up one of your knights, returning a level 2 knight, for example, to the stock and taking a level 3 knight. So, those are all of the many actions that are on there. I told you earlier that you can build upgrades to your castle, which essentially just place a piece over the top of these. When you do this, instead of resolving the action by putting a knight there, you're automatically going to get to resolve that action at a certain point in the phase. So I wouldn't have to place a knight now. I know this is greens, but I wouldn't have to place a knight, and I would automatically get 2 squires during the resolution of the castle area. So you can place your knights in order to try and take these actions. The final place you can place is you may place knights out onto conflicts, which are out here on the board. And these are essentially fights against the French. And you're going out and you're fighting against the French. And you're placing knights here to try and contribute to the total strength of the attack. In this case, 7. Or in the other case, 3, a much less strong attack. When you place out here, you need to meet that number, but you can contribute part of that number, and other players will come and contribute to it as well. So you're placing out here and you're trying to get to a total value of 7 amongst everybody's knights. Whoever has the majority of that contribution is going to get victory points equal to the number that's highest on here if they manage to beat it. So if they manage to total 7 or more. The player who had the most would get 6, second most would get 3, and third most would get 1. If they do not succeed in doing so, the knights are going to stay there until the next round, and the battle that was not accomplished would slide down along with its accompanying knights, and you have another round to try and contribute to get to that 7. And again, if you do so, you're going to award all the victory points. The first fight, which failed, would only reward victory points to the players first and second, and they would only get 3 and 1 victory points, so second and third place. If after the second time you still don't beat that fight, you're not going to get your knight back unless you pay 1 money for each level of that knight, and then you have to ransom him back, essentially. They're going to want you to ransom him, you pay the money, or you lose him back to the supply. In addition to placing in this area to contribute to the fights, the first 6 people that contribute there will get a bonus from the king for placing there. So you'll see that this one here is 3 money, and they would place their guy here, flip that over, and take the 3 money. And there's a 2 money one. There's one that allows you to change one of your knights to a higher level knight. There's one that lets you take a noble from anywhere on the board. And this is really important because those nobles score a lot of points at the end of the game for each different noble you have. So it's 0 for 1, 1 for 2, 3 for 3, 6 for 4, and all the way up to 36 if you manage to get all of them. A lot of victory points at the end of the game. So one of them could let you take any one of these remaining, and there are not enough for all of the players. So you get to choose one of those if you're one of the 6 first people to place on a fight each round. Anyhow, essentially you're going to go through and you're going to place out your knights one at a time, maybe kicking other people off of these nobleman country spots, getting their people back, and they'll place them again later somewhere else, or maybe even place over you again, until everyone has placed all of their knights, and you don't resolve them immediately like I showed you. It's just convenient to tell you how that works. After that, you're going to go on to the voting stage. There's a parliament phase, and there are laws currently enacted. This says that if you have, for every 2 people you have out here in the nobleman area, when we go through parliament after the voting, you'll get 3 victory points. This one says whoever has the most money will get to increase the level of one of their knights. And this one says whoever has the most squires will get a new level 1 knight. So these laws are currently in the parliament, but there are 3 new laws that can potentially come out. This one says that if you have, for each exactly level 2 knight you have, you're going to get a squire. This one says if you pay a money, you can get a voting cube. And this one here says for each squire and money that you get rid of, you can get 3 victory points. So these are all currently up for voting. And each player has their own set of voting markers that they will use to vote on these. You'll see they look like this. Sequentially, in order, starting with this one and moving to this one, we're going to vote on these new laws. And each player has their yes and their no. Yes, no. They're going to choose these secretly and use them to vote. Throughout the game, you may acquire voting cubes, and these are going to count as additional votes that you may use on the votes for each of these, but they also have other uses throughout the game, like having the most could be beneficial to you at certain points. So, if you're really strongly feeling that you want this vote to come in, you could add voting cubes to it, and at the same time, everybody would reveal their votes. So maybe we have these 3 votes. We look at it, we have 2 yeses, and we have 2 nos. In this case, it's going to go to the yeses, and the yes would go through, the one player using their voting cube to boost their vote. This law would come in, and these would be pushed, well, one would be pushed over and out. So we no longer have, for every 2 guys you have in the country, you're going to get 3 points. Perhaps the person who played the 2 votes does not like that idea because they don't have 2 guys out here. And they lose their voting cube back to the supply. Then we would vote on the next one, and we do all of those in sequential order. After that's done, we're going to enact the laws left to right. So first, whoever has the most money would get to upgrade one of their knights, and then so forth and so on. After we've done that, we're going to resolve all of the knight placements like I told you earlier. So we'll go through and resolve each one of these nobleman spaces, either getting the nobleman or the benefit, or paying 3 gold to get both. After that, we're going to go to our boards, and you're going to get for each one of these things that you placed a knight on the appropriate reward, and if you have the upgrade, of course, you'll get the reward as well. Finally, we'll go down and we'll resolve all of these fights. And all fights that are completed, meaning they have strength equal to or greater than the number on the sheet, will reward victory points to the contributors. The ones that don't will slide down, keep the knights, and we'll move on to the next round. We'll put out new fights for ones that were completed, or ones that slid down, and we'll start another round of placement, starting with the first player. So everyone would have all of their knights back. There would be new fights out. In addition, the first player marker would move based on whoever took the reward for this area. So whoever owned here Surrey would get to choose who the first player is with this marker. They could choose themselves or anyone else. In addition, these laws would no longer be here, and 3 new laws would come out. And this law thing is kind of the tracker for the rounds of the game. So you're going to play through several rounds of the game until these laws run out, which means it will be the last round of the game. And at the end of the game, points are going to be awarded not only for the various things throughout the game that we earn, but for whoever has the most total power of knights. So you're going to add up the value of all of your knights. Whoever has the most expansions built in their castle. And then you're going to get points for all of your noblemen, which also give you votes during the voting phase. So basically, by balancing out fighting, by balancing out getting noblemen and appeasing those noblemen out in the country, and by getting the right votes enacted and building up your own castle, you'll try and expand, get the most victory points, and hopefully be the winner of Lancaster. Well, there you have it. That is Lancaster, a 2 to 5 player game that plays in about an hour from Queen Games. And for an hour-long game, it has a great amount of strategy in it. I like that the knights are, important for everything. You need to balance out your knights to use their power in the country for the noblemen, but you don't want to use too weak of a knight. As weak as possible, but not too weak, and you want to balance it out with squires so that somebody else doesn't kick you out of an area you need. Paying attention to various ways to get those nobleman tiles is super important to your score at the end of the game. If you don't have enough noblemen, you won't have enough votes to influence the parliament, you won't have enough points at the end of the game, and it's just a terrible thing if you don't manage to get the noblemen that you need. So pay a lot of attention to that while playing. Having a lot of knights is not necessarily important, but having the right values of knights can be very important based on what laws are in Parliament and what you need to do with them. Building up extensions to your castle is always a good idea, so there's all types of strategies you can take in order to earn victory points and win the game. And I'm not sure any of them is more powerful than others, but you need a good balance of all of them to really perform well. The game is quick, the game is well done, and the components are awesome. I definitely suggest checking this one out from Queen Games. In the future, I will have a review of the expansions. Not as fond of the game with the expansions, just a little bit of a spoiler, so if you've been checking into that, I'd say start the base game now and check out the expansion when I do the review of that later. Have a good one, and hopefully you've enjoyed the review.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.